if it makes sense. And some of the new trends don't always make sense to me. And just because it's a lot of people are doing it doesn't mean it's the right way. So,
Welcome to the Disgruntled PM podcast, your weekly therapy session for the chaotic world of project management, transforming daily frustrations into real action. Welcome, everybody. I'm Trevor, the Disgruntled PM, joined today by my guest and CEO of Ironmaster, Matt Dawson. Now, today we're going to be talking about a lot of different things in the design and prototyping phase, and also iterations of products, because Matt here has been at the helm of Ironmaster for 22 years? So he's seen a lot go on with prototyping, with design, and their products have largely been unchanged. So, Matt, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and we can get going on this?
sure. Yeah. Hi. I'm Matt Dawson. As Trevor said, thank you for having me on the show. And I'm the president and CEO of Ironmaster. And, even though you mentioned that I have 22 years of experience, running Ironmaster, which is true, uh, Ironmaster is actually, has a longer history than that. My father started the business when I was just a kid, actually. And so like back in 1979. And when I was going to college, I worked for him for quite a few years. And I was actually, the manager of Ironmaster for a couple of years before it was time for me to kind of, move on and do my own things. And I went off into the corporate world for a while. And so I actually have, more like almost 30 years of experience working at Ironmaster. And so developing products started for me back when probably like when I was 18 years old,
So you've only been doing this for a little while.
just a little while. Yeah. But yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about. I feel fortunate to, to be, um, running a company in an industry that I really care about, with the fitness industry. And so it's a, I like building equipment that I like to train on. And I think that, you know, history has proven that, that Ironmaster makes equipment that a lot of people like to use. And so we kind of, have a legacy to maintain, if you will, I really feel like I like to stay focused in our lane of what we do well, like we don't really plan to build cardio equipment, we build strength training stuff, and we kind of focus, specifically in the home gym space, right? We don't really make, equipment for commercial applications, although, some of our stuff does get used in uh, colleges, um, or different schools, or some small, personal training studios. Some gyms have our equipment too, and even though it's technically designed to be multifunctional and more suited for individuals' home gym space, but so, but we just stay focused on our primary objectives.
Well, let's start at the beginning with kind of the whole concept of you're the Ironmaster is one of the best kept secrets in the home gym community. And I wouldn't say that's a badge to have, but it's also something that is a drawback, because your design for your current bench and your current dumbbells really hasn't changed much in the 30 years you've been around there.
I mean, I would say yes and no. That's true. I mean, uh, at Ironmaster, we've had products that have been, not significantly changed for decades. And we do make some updates to them. And like the Super Bench product has been on the market for you know about 20 years. And but prior to that, we had other benches that were different, and they were so. But we came up with a better idea, a new design, and started building them in our own factory in Reno, Nevada. Uh, but you know, I've just worked on various iterations of that product, and I do from time to time try to you know make an effort, do some R&D to see if there's any way to change the design or build a new one that we prefer. And I don't know, it just feels like if I don't find something that's a significant improvement, I don't really feel like there's any necessity to do, to really, make a new model of an adjustable bench if the one we have, checks all the boxes. But if there's anything we can do to it to improve it, which we've made, a number of enhancements, we're on, kind of like our third version of the super bench since we started. And it still has essentially the same design, but made some significant changes in the way it's built and the tolerances and the quality and the versatility of it is gotten better and better. So as long as we can continue to, if I can continue to make a product that I'm really proud of, and it suits a lot of people's needs and sells well, um, you know, I like to stay behind that and keep supporting it. And so that's something that I think is a philosophy that Ironmaster and I have had. Maybe that was instilled in me by my father, but it was just like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But if you can improve it, by all means do that.
Now, when you talk about improving things, we'll take the super bench as the example because I personally have the the version 2, I think it is,
Okay.
and I know that you've got the new version out, and there's a lot of updates to that. I'm sure you probably spent a lot of time redesigning it, messing with it. Where did you get to the point where good enough was good enough for it to be released and to stop tinkering with it?
Right. Well, that's a tricky business to tricky thing to answer because you can never I never really feel like I can stop improving and tinkering. I enjoy doing that, and I like to challenge myself to see if we can do something better. But it's at a certain point, I have to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, this product I think now is good. It achieved my objectives, and that I had. If I have a project to say I want to make a new version of our super bench, for example. Um, what new features do I need it to have? Do I think the customers are asking for based on feedback from users? And just anything new that I might learn about, and just observing what's going on in the industry. Try to follow trends to a certain degree. I don't like to just make things all trendy, but if I think any new trends that I see in the market for adjustable benches, for example, seem like a good idea, I'll try to see if there's a way we can incorporate those ideas into an Ironmaster product. And you know, if it makes sense. And some of the new trends don't always make sense to me. And just because it's a lot of people are doing it doesn't mean it's the right way. So, but to answer, when do I feel like the product is developed to the right point to release it? Um, you know, I would say I never feel 100% confident that I've made the right decision, that I've made that this is the perfect time and it's got all the right features. But you know, if you do the 80-20 rule, you can figure you've achieved 80% of everything you wanted, and you have to kind of like toss out a few things that aren't really realistic. And it feels like it's definitely got enough changes and enhancements to feel like it's been an upgrade. Then that's when we pull the trigger. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's some of it is just a gut feeling, that this is the right move, but it's also based on metrics that I've established based on don't, following what's going on and with our customer base, and we get a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, things on our social media. We talk to people in person, like I talked to you at the home gym conference,
Yep.
that we went to earlier this year. And when we do things like that in person, or people come to our showroom, we have a showroom here in Monroe, Washington, where headquarters is. So our offices, our warehouse is out there, but we have a showroom out front too for people that are local in the Seattle, Washington region. They can come in and look at things. And I, you know, a lot of times when people do that, I like to go downstairs and meet with them and have these conversations because, getting direct feedback from people that have put their hands on it and tried it um, is really helpful. That's what we do. I mean, I make this equipment and design equipment to give people what they want. I try to do it in keeping in mind that I want to make it unique too. I want to make something that's proprietary and it has an Iron Master style to it, and that I personally believe in as well. So I have to find the combination of like what do I feel like is a good ergonomic, strong, has a lot of great features, and has a nice aesthetic. All these kind of factors come into play, but it's not just my opinion; it's what other people ask for as well.
Now, with all of that said, you're going after your voice of the customer a lot, and I know with any product that's a retail product, you're always using some sort of influencer or reviewers types of thing as help for your product marketing. How do you balance the feedback you get from the reviewers who do this who do this as a business versus the customer that comes in your showroom or
Yeah,
the average person that you talk to at a show?
yeah, that's a great question because in the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, there's been a big swing when it comes to uh, professional reviewers that like to, they have a channel, they have social media, they have YouTube channels, and they acquire equipment and post reviews and hands-on reviews of various types of fitness gear, right? And prior to that, it was very limited. You know, People didn't really. Uh, I guess it took a while for somebody to recognize that there's a space and there's a need and there's an audience for that type of product reviews. And so prior to that, I never really had like what we call influencers that were out there in the market. Um, that a lot of people would follow and listen to their advice, listen to their feedback, and that would influence people's decisions on what they think is good or bad or valuable or whatever. So I think that in the recent years anyway, that plays a big part of it because you know, we still listen to the end user customers, and that's what I mostly care about. But it would be foolish to say that I want to ignore the comments and the feedbacks or the requests from popular influencers that are in the fitness segment, right? Because they directly influence a lot of people. That's how they got the name, right? And I'd rather get people's like personal opinion, their own personal experience. I like that kind of feedback. And I do find it frustrating sometimes that the feedback we get from some customers or some individuals seems to be like a complete echo of what they've already heard somebody else say who has their own opinion. And so that I'm not really hearing like a unique, like maybe like a opinion from somebody's from different perspectives, right? And so sometimes it feels like I just keep hearing the same requests over and over again in recent years, where that didn't really take place as much in the past because everybody's like a personal experience of trying our gear or other gear that they've had in the past that they want to know if Ironmaster has anything that can solve their particular needs. It was a little bit more specific to the individual. And now I feel like it's a little bit more homogeneous because people are out there doing research online and there's a lot more content they can look at and which is great. I think it helps people make decisions. I think it's helped us sell a lot more equipment to be honest, but it also kind of skews people's um you know their their opinion of what they think is good or not good. So
Their favorite influencer says, I wish this item had this." Then everybody else thinks, "I wish it had this," so that you get 20 emails with the exact same verbiage.
true, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, and I'm not saying you know I, I don't want to come across as saying that this is a really terrible thing that's happened, but it's just something that I've noticed. I
Yeah.
recognize that we have a lot of this similar requests, similar comments, um, and I think that people are being influenced, and that's just the nature of how things are in 2025. So
Well, they're called, like you said, they're called influencers for a reason. And like you said, you'd be dumb to not leverage that influence, but also have to balance that fine line of, is this just because it can be done, does it need to be done?
Yeah, you know what? That's funny you say that because that is a mantra that have been known to repeat around the office a lot. It's like, yeah, there is definitely some things that can be done, but should they be done? And just because it's possible doesn't mean that I should do it. When it comes to product development, and not just product development, but just anything that goes on with running Ironmaster business. Uh, I have to kind of make these decisions. Sometimes it's fun if you're deep down inside like an inventor, and which I am. And I really, really, some of the best parts of my time, my career that I've had is spending time in the workshop, or spending time, you know, at the computer drawing something up and creating new things. Creating new mechanical devices is something I'm really passionate about, and I just find it a lot of fun, and personally rewarding. I mean, before I did a lot of product uh, creating new products at Ironmaster. I had this time where for like, I don't know, like 10 years, I was like building furniture. I was learning how to do woodworking, and I bought a bunch of equipment, did it kind of on a shoestring budget, but I was figuring out how to construct things. And instead of just building furniture with some already created blueprints or designs, I would get inspired by other things, and then I would just decide I want to build something that I like. I want to create it from scratch. So so I did some of that. So I've always enjoyed doing that sort of thing. So when I do that at Ironmaster, it's a lot of fun for me. So I have to keep reminding myself though that just because I found something that I think is super cool and I want to make it, I have to kind of realize that it isn't necessarily something that everybody's going to appreciate, and it might add a lot of cost and complexity, or it might add some limitations to the equipment that that I have to bear all those things in mind, right? So it's I think the same thing happens when I get feedback, when I get requests from users of Ironmaster gear. A lot of the people say, man, it would be great if um, you could make this feature or add this functionality to your bench or to your adjustable dumbbells or to your home gym machines or whatever. But they really haven't thought it through, like, because they don't do this full time like I do.
Mhm.
They haven't really thought it through that, well, that's not actually even physically possible for it to happen, or they want us to make a really neat attachment for our bench, but the attachment for the bench is like 3 times bigger than a bench itself, and then it seems a little bit silly where it doesn't really it's not really an attachment anymore. It's a whole new piece of equipment that really is required to have the kind of footprint and support that you would need. And so sometimes it makes sense to have an attachment, sometimes it really doesn't. And um, when I look at it, I have to kind of look at it from different perspectives. I want to make something that's unique and fun, but I want to try to satisfy people's requests, but it has to make sense from a cost standpoint. It has to be have to kind of like try to serve as many customers as possible, but I have to realize it's impossible to serve every customer with every specific function or feature that they want, um, because it just that might make it not as good for the vast majority of our users and our customers. So
Yeah, I mean, I think back to, like I said, I have one of your older benches that's really tall, and for the 10 years I've had it, I always cursed, "Why is this thing so tall?" And
yeah,
then one time I heard you in an interview say, "It's because we had to make it that tall for the mechanism that we were using, because there wasn't another way to do it until you came out with the new version." And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't always think about when they're looking at a finished product. There's a reason behind most of the decisions made, and they're not always cost sensitive. Sometimes they're just physical constraints of how to make it work.
yeah, that's true, Trevor. I will say that there was years and years of time where I was maybe like a decade where I really wanted to redesign the super bench to make it shorter in height and the flat position, but I couldn't come up with any good solutions that would like make it shorter, but still have all the same adjustment ranges and all the different. I like this bench to really be the most versatile and the most functional weight bench in the market, and it still is. And but I don't want to give that up, right? And making like for example, the leg extension, leg curl attachment, that is an attachment that's really popular that plugs into the end of the bench. You put weight plates on it, and you can really load it up heavy, and you can do those quad and hamstring exercises. Well, the ideal height for a bench um, to match up with an attachment like that, is the taller height, like on the model bench you have.
Mhm.
And then so there was kind of a trade-off between like the flat bench height and all the other functions that this bench is supposed to do. Like that's one of them, but also the incline bench position. So we I didn't want to lose some of the great functionality and features by just, hacking this thing down and making it stubby. And so it took a long time to kind of come up with a good idea. And it was, had a lot of prototypes that just weren't right. I have a pile of stuff, that I've finally had to take to the scrapyard after um, trying various ideas. Um, and there was an idea that I had, and I said, maybe I don't have to change the bench height. Maybe what I need to do is build a platform that would sit around the base of the
That's
bench
what I did.
where your feet can go, right? And we think we might have talked about that before. And that does actually do the trick. I mean, I built it myself. Told you earlier that I've got a wood shop, so I decided just to build this out of wood because it was the easiest thing to do really quickly. And so I built I called it a bench riser, and it worked. It did the job, but I thought it was a little clunky. But I thought, we could make that, we could sell it. So then I was like, I don't really want to sell a wooden platform, Ironmaster. I prefer to make things all out of metal. So for our regular product line. So I started developing a steel foot riser that had rubber on top, and I was really really close to pulling the trigger on that until I had this like new inspiration, um, and if I decided, maybe I should try a different kind of geometry on the locking ring mechanism. And I was thinking about trusses like you use in homes
Mhm.
for building roofs, And I was like, the truss design really is quite strong, and that's why and uses less material than sort of traditional roof construction. And I was like, maybe I could incorporate that sort of a shape instead of just a fully circular shape on the locking ring. So I kind of merged them together and just literally spent a few days in the workshop and was cutting and grinding and welding and machining and then I was like, well, I have no idea if this is going to work, because like I'm not really an engineer by education, but I am practical from just you know a lot of years of building equipment, and so I didn't have even an engineer on staff other than some people that I consulted with at that time. So I just built it and tried it out, and then said let's put some weight on this bench, and physically load it up and prove that it can hold the weight, And so you had to find 1,000 pounds of Olympic weight plates to sort of precariously stack up on this bench and make sure it was going to be strong enough in the various positions that it goes in. And I was actually, pretty pleasantly surprised. And I said, this is going to work. Wow, I love this. So I think I talked about earlier that the leg extension attachment is something that I think is a really important device, and I always want to have that functionality. And making the bench lower in height by 3.5 inches got it right into the competition bench press specs. So anywhere between 16 to 17.2 inches is where it should be to make it if you're a competitor in bench pressing. And it's that height for a reason because different people have different leg lengths,
Yep.
and so the bench isn't necessarily like that height isn't perfect for somebody who's like 6'5", but it's a standard, so that everybody gets used to it. And so I think people feel comfortable with that height because most fixed benches that are for flat bench pressing are all generally about that height. Adjustable benches, though, historically have always been a little taller, and there's for the same reasons that the super bench that you have is taller. And, but so I figured, well, what we can do is we can make the bench lower, but we have to be able to make a leg extension attachment adapt to that. And your feet will sort of scrape on the ground, if you're sitting up and doing leg extensions. So we had to elevate the end of the bench 10 degrees and make the attachment work with the bench at that angle. And it was, at first I was like really cringing, thinking it was going to be a major compromise, and that particular exercise. But, after massaging the design some and finding out once you sit on the bench and if you close your eyes and do the exercise, it really doesn't, you don't really notice the angle. And I said, I think we have a winner here. So we just had to make most of the attachments for the bench that we had historically that were really popular attachments like dip, handle, or sit up attachment, or pull up, chin up attachment, things like that. They all worked with the new lower version of the bench. So I was pretty stoked about that. So, um, that's, that's what we've been doing now, on the sort of what we call the Super Bench Pro version. Is we made it shorter in height, and then now we're on to the version 2 of the Super Bench Pro, which still uses the same geometry, but we've added some additional features and some standard things that it comes with on version 2. So yeah.
You'll have to tell me about those offline.
Okay.
So now I want to pause. And now some words from our sponsors.
Projects slipping? Teams misaligned? Using the wrong tools? Introducing Spec C from Constructive Curiosity, the project execution software built by project managers. Spec C keeps your team aligned, your priorities clear, and progress moving. And right now, join the Spec C beta launch crew to get early access and help shape the future of project management. Sign up today at constructivecuriosity.com. Current PM software not coming through? It's time to see what Spec C can do for you.
To tell the audience about the Patreon account that I have for the show, and that has 2 tiers. The first tier is the $1 a month or $1 a month low hanging fruit tier, and that's where you're supporting the show and just helping me pay for all the stuff that I do to keep this going. Then there's the $5 a month drinking the Kool-Aid tier, which is where you get access to the post-mortem interviews of every single guest that I've had on the show, to include Matt. And one of the things me and Matt are going to be talking about is how to take these tried and true products and know when to adapt them to the future versus standing with what you've got and keeping it there. Because a lot of stuff now is we want to iterate, we want to make it better, we want to improve, but sometimes you just stay with what you got because you got a good enough product, and incremental change is not going to be incremental improvement. So with that, I know me and you talked at Home Gym Con a lot about your newest product, the Valhalla. One of the things that I really wanted to break down with you about it is, how did you go from an idea in your head to a drawing on paper to a prototype, and then all the way to a production product, and kind of walk me through this whole process and how
Sure.
it came to be? Because I know there had to be changes, compromises, tough decisions, things like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, Trevor, the Ironmaster started, like I said, 40 plus years ago, with one product, which was a self-spotting, all-in-one gym machine. And it was based on, a different version of what was known as a Smith machine. And it's our machine is that we still make today, the IM 2000. That's the current version anyway. That's been on the market for about 15 years, but um, there was a lot of earlier versions of that, just like the Super Bench, that go back to like 40 years ago. And so that product was kind of unique. It was inspired by a Smith machine, but it was built in a slightly different way to make it more ergonomic. To add a lot of like storage and make it a smaller footprint. And so add some stuff that makes it a little bit better for like home use, individual use, rather than just one single piece of equipment you might see in a gym, right? So so that machine's been on the market a long time, and over the years, we've had a lot of customer feedback, and people wanting to know if we could, like, you know, add more to the IM 2000 machine that we currently sell. And it has a built-in cable system that is really simplistic. It uses the lifting bar, which is the main barbell that's on the machine, and it uses that as the weight source. It turns it into a weight carriage, and we have a couple cables you can connect to an upper pulley or a lower pulley. And so you can do your primary weightlifting exercises like lat pull downs and seated rows, cable curls, face pulls, all those kind of things. It already does. But I think, there's a ton of people out there that, including myself actually, that, you know, enjoy having a more comprehensive cable system, and especially a cable system that you don't have to set up and connect things together in order to change it up and be able to start using it, saving time, um, and configuring everything in your gym during your workout is a pretty nice feature. So adding, making something that is multifunctional does require some setup changes, for everything. All of our bench does, our machines do. However, you know, we've had people asking us, how come you guys don't put some weight stacks on this machine and make the cables a fixed cable system and make it more like a functional trainer? That would be really cool if you could do that. And I said, for years I thought, that would be really cool, but I just don't want to compromise how great the IM 2000 already is. It does a lot. It's hard to improve because of the fact that it's got a lot of functionality with a simplistic frame. It's strong. The ergonomics are great. It's easy to kind of work with and walk around and go get your weight plates off the storage bars and put them on the barbell. It just does a lot of things really, really well. And so trying to figure out how to add on something to that unit had been a huge challenge. And I focused on that for a few years, actually, you know, brainstorming and whiteboard sketching things, and even prototyping a little bit in the workshop, trying to figure out what could I do here that would be able to add sort of a functional trainer capability to this great machine. And, I finally came to the realization that, gosh, this thing is just, the platform here is just not right to just sort of like tack something on, just adding it on is just, there's not enough space. The overall footprint is wrong. I said, maybe it's time to develop a new machine. I don't develop new things unless there's a need for it. I'd rather sort of like enhance or make add-ons for the stuff that we already have that are already good. And, that's a little bit self-serving too, is because if we have a customer base that already has, thousands of IM 2000s out in the marketplace, if we develop an attachment, something they can buy to add on to their piece of equipment, well, that's great. And we have built-in customers, right? Those people come back to us and buy new things to add more functionality to their home gym. And I always try to do that for, it serves two purposes. One is it helps us get, more orders from customers that are already loyal and happy Ironmaster customers. But two, it also helps our customers be able to, add more functionality without having to start all over and buy something new. And but I tried, we tried, the whole team of us here tried our best to try to add that kind of functionality to the 2000, and it just didn't really ever seem like it was going to be done properly. So we said, let's just start from the beginning and let's try to make a new piece of equipment, and we'll call it the IM 3000. We've come up with a name on it, like you said, it's called the Valhalla. So we'll call it the Valhalla 3000. And just to make it more memorable, just like Superbench has a name, instead of just a number. So we said, let's take what's good about the IM 2000, which is our self-spotting lifting bar, which, we had a patent on that design for a long time. And so we're still using our own proprietary patented design for the barbell part of it. And I want to make sure it has like great storage for weight plates and things like that. So making it still have all that functionality, plus, making it more a complete comprehensive gym that has a built-in cable system with a lot of adjustments and a lot of functionality, was something that made sense. So that ended up being the scope of the project. We said, here are the goals. We want to have, we don't want to lose any of the functionality that the IM 2000 had, because it's an amazing machine, and we get such great, strong reviews for it even today, even though it's been on the market for a long time. I just read a review yesterday where somebody said this is just like incredible. The quality, the simplicity of it, they just love it, right? So based on all that kind of feedback, I don't want to do any disservice to that design. So let's make a new one, incorporate the things that people really like about it, but add, how about we have to change the framework in order to make sure all of the cable system could work really well. The other decision we had to make was, should we just make the cable system plate loaded versus a weight stack type of a design? A weight stack design is a lot easier to use. You just have to move a pin and change your weights. And it's really straightforward, but it's more expensive because, you have to pay for all these weight plates that are all like steel rectangular plates that are all machined and make a whole stack. And that adds some inherent cost.
And then you have to ship it.
Then there's all the weight has to be shipped as well. And so I said, it would make the machine less expensive to just make it plate loaded for the cable system, because, somebody only has to have one set of weights, which is their like Olympic weight set, that they could use on the main barbell, but they could also use them on the carriage on the cable system. But it didn't really give, my gut feeling was that, people they want to have, simplicity and ease of use, and they don't want to spend too much time reconfiguring things that they don't need to. So I thought, having to load two different kind of weight carriage systems with weight plates is going to take some time between each workout, each set you do. You're probably going to be changing the weight, and I thought it's going to really be time consuming. So I decided, and a carriage system that uses Olympic plates takes up a lot of space. It's pretty bulky.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a lot of room for that. And I thought, a weight stack that can have a lot of, a couple 100-pound weight stack is a really lot smaller footprint, and we can do things in a little smaller space. So ultimately decided to go that direction. We're not the only company that makes functional trainer with weight stacks on it. So I thought that was a good combination to have, along with keeping, even though you have a regular barbell that has to be plate loaded, I think the combo is actually nice and gives you the best ergonomics and ease of use and speed of training. Right. So, but we also, one of the other really key things on the scope of the project was, the goal was to, make sure that the cable system has enough weight on it for some hardcore users, for primary exercises. And a lot of functional trainers, are kind of limited on how much weight you're actually pulling. And if a weight stack has 200 pounds on it and it's a functional trainer, which typically they have a 2-to-1 cable ratio. So you pull the cable, it moves twice the distance as the stack does, and to give you a lot of range of motion for lots of interesting exercises. But you end up effectively only having 100 pounds maximum of resistance on the cable as you're pulling it. So, 100 pounds is not enough for most strong guys for doing rows or doing lat pull downs and things like that. So, what other manufacturers have done in this space with functional trainers, they say, well, let's try to connect both weight stacks together with a complicated series of pulleys, and they'll have like a lat bar that has like 2 hooks on it, and you can hook up the one weight stack to this hook and one weight stack to this hook, and then you can pull both stacks at the same time. And so you have 100 pounds on this side of effective resistance and 100 pounds on this side. So now you can combine them and have 200 pounds of resistance. And that's a decent solution on how to go about it. But I thought that's still pretty clunky. It takes more connections and more setups, and you're still limited to 200 pounds, which is enough for the vast majority of people for cable systems. But it's not enough for some serious trainers who do seated rows with 250 pounds, So other manufacturers decided, well, we'll add some like power bands. You can strap some bands onto the weight stack or to the carriage to add more resistance if you've sort of exceeded what the number of plates can be pulled. Or they'll have like a weight horn that gets added to the top of the weight stack, and you can add Olympic plates onto that. So you're adding Olympic plates to your weight stack as well to get more weight fully loaded on the system. And I thought, well, that seems kind of clunky too. So we spent a fair amount of time, doing some R&D and figuring out how we could connect all the cable systems together and have a central upper and lower central pulley position that pulls both stacks at the same time, and it doesn't require like anything to disconnect or reconnect, and you just have those different stations available to hook a handle onto and pull whenever you're ready. And I mean, I wasn't even sure we could do it, to be honest, but I said it's got to be possible. So we spent like months prototyping that, and kind of started off with using rope, some and instead of just regular aerospace cable like we normally use. And so we could reconfigure things and move pulleys around. And I mean, it was really interesting process to figure out if it was going to possibly work. And, in my experience in a development process of gym equipment, especially, is you can do all the design work you want to do. You spend a lot of time on CAD, doing 3D drawings and making things look really cool on the computer screen. But unless you feel it and feel how stable things feel the smoothness of how things move, feel the ergonomics of it all, you really need to build a prototype and prove out the design elements before you move forward and build everything around it. So this was it was still a rough design, but we spent a lot of time tinkering, as you say, in the workshop, making sure that I liked how it worked. And I said, this is perfect, because I wanted to make something that was unique that nobody else has done. Because, that's what Ironmaster has been known for, is making unique, interesting designs that it's still weight training equipment, but we do it in a way that nobody else has really quite done it, So I think we were able to hit that mark and achieve that with the cable system design, where we have, a special idler pulley system, and it's got like a 3-point cable spanner that pulls both stacks simultaneously, and then there's a couple of adjustments on the cables to balance it left and right. So and amazingly, it works. So you can do. We have two 200-pound stacks, and so when you want to do like a seated row, for example, you could literally pull both stacks at the same time and have 400 pounds of resistance, and without having to do any configuration. You just connect it and go, So, but then still on the front pulleys that are adjustable and swivel out front, you've still have this sort of traditional 2-to-1 ratio, which is what, functional trainers were designed to do, which was to give you a lot of, free moving capability, and give you enough resistance for pretty much anybody, So you have you still have that functionality out front, but then we have combined in a really unique way how to make the weight heavier for your sort of primary strength moves,
So that's a lot to digest there of how you kind of went through the process, because like you said, you went through and did it your own way rather than copying what was already on the market or replicating that. And I think that's
Yeah.
a great place to kind of wrap this up. And I've just got to ask, because, you've said you've been in this industry for a long time, you've been in charge for a long time and talked to a lot of customers. What are some of the funniest recommendations you've seen, or the funniest, my product doesn't work because I did this, and you just look at someone and go, why would you ever do that with my product?
All right. Well, I guess, there's a lot of things that, that I come into work, one a week, and you see some customer support questions, and they have a question, they're confused about how something works, and you just have to shake your head and you think, wow, I can't believe that was misunderstood that badly, But I was talking about the lifting bar for our self-spotting machines, the 2000 and the upcoming Valhalla 3000. It has the proprietary design where you have a lifting bar, and there's these 2 hooks that go down and rotate, and they go down into holes which are in the guide rails, right? And those are all integrated, and that's what's unique about our system, is that there's holes that are into the rails that it guides up and down on. and the pins go down into those holes. Well, we had a customer, send us a photo of their machine and say, this thing just doesn't really feel right. And it doesn't really feel safe. We're not sure, what's wrong with it. I think you guys, sold me a lemon, but the customer took the lifting bar and installed it upside down. And so the pins were going up, and, I've never even considered that, maybe we should
That was
test it and see
possible.
if that's possible. But I mean, it is, it is kind of like uh, it is possible to put the bar on upside down, but I just didn't think anybody would ever do that. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but somebody got confused, and they put it on, and they're probably working at midnight, trying to assemble their new fun home gym equipment, and doing it by themselves, maybe didn't have a helper like we suggest, and but somehow they had weight on the bar and the pins were in the holes, but normally the pins go in the holes and then gravity and weight, pushes the pins tighter into the holes, and it's really secure that way. Well, the hooks were going upwards, and actually there's enough of a shelf on the pin to hold into the holes in the rails that it actually held and stayed at the level that you locked it in at. And so it was a shocking thing to see. And I mean, yeah, I couldn't help but laugh about it, thinking, wow, this is amazing, So of course we helped this customer quickly realize that it was put on upside down, and he got to turn around, and now he can't believe that happened. And he laughed about it, and it's all fine, nothing bad happened. But so stuff like that happens sometimes, customers just don't understand. They don't read the instructions well enough, there's, the RTFM, right? You have to read the manual.
Hey, we're family friendly here.
Yeah, I won't say it out loud, but and and I of course all of us guys who put stuff together have been guilty of that at one point or another. I said, I got this, I can figure this out, and then you realize you put something on backwards. So that happens. The other thing that I've noticed is we get customers that send us requests, and they say, you guys really need to make like like you need to make your bench, have like a glute ham developer attachment, and
Something
and I
that's
said,
completely out of scope and nowhere near anything that you make.
right, and we're like, okay, well, we make like a hyper extension attachment for the bench, and it's relatively big, but it does a good job, and you can take it and disconnect it and stand it up against the wall, and it doesn't take up a lot of room. And historically, I've always taken the my principle is that I want to make equipment that's not too big and too bulky, and because it's for home gym space, and a lot of space at home is limited, so I want to make it do as much as possible in the least amount of space. And so making stuff that's really big and like sort of commercial sized, is not really my goal. And so a glute ham developer bench, like Sorinex made the first ones, and then I think some other brands are for home fitness brands are making them too. Well, these things are gigantic, they're like they're like 4 feet square. They have the footprint of like our IM 2000, and it just does a few movements, so I think people will think you guys, and they'll make comments to us like, you guys are missing out so badly, by not making this type of attachment. You'll become multi-billionaires if you can make this kind of a device that I think makes sense. So
if that was true, then you'd be making it.
Yeah, it's like, well, you know what? Yes, sometimes, I mean, I have to be, realistic. Sometimes I might have just completely have missed the boat and never thought of an idea that somebody wants to send us. So every customer that sends us feedback, and so you guys should develop this, you guys should change your product to this. I mean, it's all read, and I give it all attention, because you just never know, right? I will say that, 9 times out of 10, the ideas, to us don't make any sense, or they're just not economically viable, or it's actually not even physically possible for it to be done, So it doesn't really make sense for us to develop an attachment for a bench that makes it something that really needs to be its own dedicated design and its own functionality to it, So just because you can't doesn't mean we should. And I, to be fair, I could develop that. And I gave it some thought. I was like, maybe I'll make a glute hand developer that's we'll still use the bench as part of the frame. But the more I kind of started, the concept, the more I thought, the bench is just going to be hidden away. It doesn't really have any actual benefit to this new type of exercise equipment that we're trying to develop here. And it seems kind of a little silly. And I said, it just doesn't make sense. And so that happens probably the most. I would say people ask us to make things to add on to our equipment. That's just not really possible. And we had a lot of people say that, like we have a curl bar that works with the adjustable dumbbells, and they really think we need to make the curl bar work with the same locking screw that goes through the weight plates and locks on like it does on the end of a dumbbell, And they said, why don't you guys make the bar like that? You should have. And but what people kind of don't really think about when they ask that question is that, well, the end of a dumbbell, our standard locking screw only holds like 37.5 pounds of weight, And so you do that on one side, the other side is then 37.5, and now it's 75 pounds, And that's great for a dumbbell, but it's not really enough weight for a curl bar, I mean, it's, you need to have, you're using both arms, so you need to be able to go heavier. And so you can't use the same exact technology on a dumbbell as you can on a barbell, And so it's a little bit, there's like a lot of little things that people think make sense initially, but you have to kind of like step back and take a look at the logic of it. And a lot of times they're kind of missing the mark. So doesn't mean that I haven't tried to think about, well, yeah, that doesn't work, but maybe I can develop a different type of mechanism that locks the plates on rather than just like sort of like what we use now, which is like an Acme threaded bar with like a spin collar, but it goes against the square backing plate too. So it holds the plates on. It's just a little slower to use, right? So making it faster to use and quicker would be a nice goal. But it's also going to make the
sometimes it's
curl
not
bar,
practical.
the curl bar is going to cost $200 without weights, And then it's like, that's going to not really be very successful if we do that. So that's an example of just because you can doesn't mean you should, that concept, people think you should just do this, but it's like, okay, well, we could, but it's like, it would cost double what we're doing now, for a product that does the job. And I just don't think that the trade-off is good. Right. I mean, somebody might tell me, well, yeah, $200 for curl bars, I would pay that because I want it so bad. I would just, yeah, I'd buy it. But, I know that most of our customers, the vast majority would be like, wow, that's way out of my price range. And I can't believe you guys developed something that was so crazy priced, So,
So,
yeah.
so we're coming up on time, and I've got my guest question that I ask everybody, or not everybody, but I personalize a question for every guest.
Okay.
So we all know, if you at all watch people, they buy treadmills at the beginning of the year, and then by March or April, they become clothes racks. What is that equivalent to a dumbbell? What is the absurd use that they become relegated to once somebody stops exercising?
Gotcha. Well, I think that I've seen a few people that have dumbbells, adjustable dumbbells like we make, or just fixed weight dumbbells that are just kind of collecting dust, And like I was one of my hobbies is car racing, so I go out and do some BMW car racing for half the year in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a lot of fun. But so you're outside in the paddock, and everybody sets up their these canopies in case it rains, and they set up and they park their race car under there and their tools and all that. So everybody's got these canopies set up outdoors, just like you would at a sporting event, for your kids. But to hold the canopies down so they don't blow away, a lot of people will take they'll bring some unused dumbbells, and they'll tie a rope or a cable to it and hold the canopy down, just so it doesn't blow away. And it's just like this really beautiful piece of equipment that they're probably not even really, I don't think they took it out of the gym that they were using, they just, now it's just a piece of dead weight, they would use.
And that's when you go over to them and say, would you like to buy an adjustable set of those?
Yeah. So that's, that's kind of one example of what you could do with a dumbbell that is kind of, you can repurpose it, it just is like a piece of dead weight. And so I've seen that, which kind of made me laugh. Luckily it wasn't an Ironmaster dumbbell. Yeah.
So with that being said, let me hand the floor over to you. Tell everybody where they can find your stuff, anything you want them to follow on social media, all that good stuff.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, we sell our products internationally, but we primarily focus on the U.S. market, right? We have ever since we were started. And so in the USA, you just go to ironmaster.com, which is our website. We sell our product directly to the consumer. We don't have any distributors, no middleman involved. And that helps us stay, directly in touch with our end users. It also helps us keep control of our costs and put things out into the market at a good price point. So I would say you go to ironmaster.com. We have social media pages too. Like we have a YouTube channel, Ironmaster Pro. We have an Instagram page, Facebook page. There's like a TikTok page. Where we put some interesting content up on there from that we share stuff that customers and other people have posted. We'll reshare that to show how people have their home gyms configured. We have a Pinterest page for that sort of thing too. Just you can get inspired. How could you buy some Ironmaster gear and incorporate that into your home gym space? So we have all those media pages too, and I think so that's the best way. We have a distributor for a long time in the UK called Ironmaster UK, and so they sell our products. It's pretty similar to the offerings we have here in the US. It's all the core products we sell. And so they sell and distribute our products all over the United Kingdom. We have Ironmaster Europe, does that same thing in all of Western Europe. So they're a big channel for us over there. Sam's Fitness in Australia, has been, almost 20 years now, I think, of selling our products down in Australia. So they have the full line of Ironmaster gear over there. So we have distributors on our website, the ironmaster.com website. We have like a distributor page, and you can, if you're not in the United States, you can go there and there'll be links to where you can find it, globally. And, if you happen to live in some place that we don't have distribution already set up, we do ship to most parts of the world, even though it can be rather expensive, but we can ship stuff we've shipped stuff to South America and Africa and different countries there, and wherever it needs to go. That's what we love doing it. We love getting our stuff further around the globe. So,
well, Matt, thank you for your time and joining me today. I'll give my shameless plug for the show of like, subscribe, follow on all the platforms. If you enjoyed this interview, tell a friend. If you didn't enjoy this interview, let me know and I'll get somebody more interesting on next time.
All right, man.
Don't forget the Patreon. And for Matt Dawson, mail your deliverables be on time, your budget's in the black, and your scope not creeping. I'm still Trevor, and I'm still the disgruntled PM. Thanks for listening.